Hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to this Super Liminal Games YouTube video. I am Dan, I am back, and you'll notice I'm full screen right now. Why's that? Well, it's because I'm not here to play a game. I'm here to talk about a game. Talk about several games, actually. Not just one game. We're going to talk about several games. I'm going to talk about the games that were played, or at least the decks that were built, out of my cube, my magic cube, at the Top Deck Games inaugural Cube Championship. And I'll go over some of the things that I got, like this sweet Cube Contributor playmat that was given to the 10 of us who had our cubes featured, or the curators of the 10 cubes that were featured in the event. There weren't 10 people, but there were 10 cubes. And I'm going to go over the decks that I have pictures of. I don't have all 16 because my cube was drafted twice. I have 13 of the 16. I'm missing 2 pictures from the top 8 draft because my cube was used in the top 8 of the event, which is pretty sweet. And I have 7 pictures from the first draft that was done that had a bunch of wacky records. So we'll see that too. But gonna jump right in on the coolest thing that has happened to me in quite some time, which was getting my cube drafted in the top 8 draft of this event. So what we have here is we have the winner. We have the 3-0 deck from the top 8 draft. I am going to highlight a couple of things that I think are quite interesting about this deck. Chief among them are this sort of fire and ice. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 total creatures in this deck. Probably 3 that I would consider attacking with on a regular basis, being Finkel, Morphling, and the Trike. And everything else, I guess the Phantom Centaur as well is a good attacker. So 4 attacking creatures. Everything else is sort of a role player, and yet there's a sort of fire and ice there. I guess, the sword really is a good card. It's well recognized, and that may have been part of it as well, because I definitely heard from more than a few people over the course of the weekend that they were not super familiar with every card in the environment, and so maybe it was just a familiarity thing. I didn't really get a chance to talk to the winner all that much about what he, what he thought, what he did. But other than that, this is a pretty, I hesitate to use the word bog standard because what really is bog standard, but this is just a pretty good blue-green control deck splashing black. And down here the suite of counter draw and removal spells is really solid. Ponder and Preordain really good, so we're drawing a lot of cards. The control magic, steal your opponent's best thing, like this is the kind of nonsense that usually wins games. So I was happy to see it win. um Low land count unless I'm missing something, which is also interesting. So happy to see it do well. And then moving on, this is one of the 2-1 decks that I got a picture of. This is, anybody who knows me and knows the way I play Magic, this is a very close and dear to my heart kind of deck. We're blue-red. We've got burn spells. We've got counter spells. We counter burn. Again, really low creature count, and I don't know if this was just related to what portion of the cube was drafted in the top 8, or if people were fighting for creatures, or if people just thought there would be more creatures than there are and passed them, more openly than they probably should have. Again, unfamiliarity with the format may have had something to do with that, but this deck went 2-1, so it is just that good. Sulfuric Vortex and Burn spells have been good for over 20 years now, and continues to be. Dominating your opponent's creatures continues to be good. I did not draft my cube in either of the 2 drafts that it fired over the weekend, so I can't, speak to how the games played out for any of these, other than the ones that I birded. But I did play an uncommon, all uncommons cube that had Dominate in it, and over 3 rounds I cast Dominate 7 times. So I do have a particular affinity for Dominate, and I do know how good it can be in those cases. So that's absolutely something. The Precursor Golem here is really cool because it is, three creatures in a trench coat, and admittedly, the targeting restriction is a little rough, but it's done quite good work in the cube in the past, in recent past. So I'm glad to see it here. Um, I like this. I look at this deck and I just get happy because it's exactly the kind of nonsense I want to be doing. Right? We've got so many burn spells, direct damage coming off the Fire Imp. I mean, Fireball, Fire Blast, like it's just fun. Psyblast. And here's the other 2-1 that I have a picture of. Um, this is one of my favorite decks that I have a picture of from the weekend. This deck was the one I birded the most just because of where the drafter was sitting. She was sitting at the end of the table, and so every time I walked by, was able to bird this, and it's just like this is a red green deck. This is great, and we have Panda Burst here. She did tell me, unfortunately, she didn't get to kill anybody with Panda Burst, but she did get to um, end a game, I think, if not come really close to ending a game with a combination of Saproling Burst and Verdant Force and Goblin Bombardment. So we'll take that. I think that a question that I have in looking at this is, why are we the Neb's Disc deck, considering we're the make tokens deck, right? We're the Rabble Master, we have the Sap Rolling Burst, we have the Grizzly Fate, we have the Verdant Force. Like, I mean, maybe we, blow the disc, play the Sap Burst, flashback a Grizzly Fate, something like that. But it just feels like we want to be on the board deck, and playing the Neb's Disc isn't something I would do, but that doesn't necessarily make it wrong, because again, she went to an event that was the top 8 of an event, so obviously full of talented, credible Magic players, and I did not make top 8. So I suppose scoreboard. Here we have one of the 1/2 decks that I have. This deck is I don't know. I can't keep saying they're all after my own heart because I love every card in this cube so much because it's my cube, it's my baby, it's everything else. But like, come on, it's got Lightning Angel in it. Anybody who's read my draft reports knows that I went through a period of time there for probably 2 years worth of drafting where if there was a Lightning Angel, I was taking it. And this deck has Lightning Angel, and it has Phyrexian Processor, and it does some things. I don't think it does enough of them. I think it is a little split between doesn't want to be an onboard blue-white tempo deck and doesn't want to be a control deck. Opposition says, I want more creatures, I want tokens, I want the ability to really do stuff, and obviously the decree here helps with that. The Phyrexian Processor is an incredibly slow way to help with that, but the actual creature count, again, is very low, which is something I think we're going to see going throughout here, that the creature counts are just low. And again, I think that in retrospect may be related to people not being overly familiar with the format and expecting there to be slightly more creatures, even though there are plenty of creatures. Like, Cube Cobra tells me the Asfan of creatures is like 17 or 18, and in a draft, and that, I mean, yeah, like obviously you need to pick your creatures, and there's a lot of really interesting spells that aren't creatures, but they're there and you can take them. I do love that the red in the deck is only for Urza's Rage and Lightning Angel. That's the kind of shenanigans that I have gotten into before, and I'll tell you, Urza's Rage can end a game. So if you can do some damage with things like Voice of All and Lightning Angel, maybe Exalted Angel, get the damage in, get him to Urza's Rage range, and then just hope, that's pretty solid. Also, Phyrexian Processor is just a very good card. So there's that. And then we have the other 1-2 deck that I have a picture of, missing the third one. I admittedly, from the person who drafted this deck, he referred to it as not doing anything. And I said, in much the Null Rod flavor text, no, it does nothing, because this deck does powerfully nothing. It's an upheaval deck with High Tide and Stroke, and those are all things that you can absolutely do. It has, Grim Monolith, the Signet, the Manifold Key to be involved with that, Thran Dynamo, and High Tide. So you can generate a lot of mana, upheaval, and then either land something with floating mana or just land something big with floating mana, like the Sarah Angel of the Sundering Titan or even a Moldrifter. But you can also just do that, and I've done this before with upheaval deck specifically. You can also just generate a lot of mana and have it land like a wet fart when you bounce everything back to your hand, because you can cast maybe one or two things, but those two things only got you to the upheaval. They didn't necessarily progress the board state. So it is a deck, certainly. It has a lot of good ideas. I just think it's missing, again, some sort of better upheaval payoff, or a more reliable way to ensure an upheaval payoff, because it's just not quite there. Now, this deck is a Palancron away from winning the game with High Tide, Palancron, and Stroke of Genius, which is something I love. So kudos to Nick for that. But again, I think it is a powerful nothing sort of deck, and it kind of, I even watched it just sort of spin wheels. And he was very happy to get to upheaval and to get to recast some artifacts, but to what end was really the issue that cropped up there. Still love it, and any deck that wants to cast Sundering Titan is a deck, a good deck in my book. And then we have the 03 that I have access to, or no, the 03. Sorry, there was only one. I'm not sure how this deck went 03, except maybe for the fact that it just doesn't do anything except be reactive for the first couple turns, and then moves into trying to control the board, but with a lot of 1-for-1 removal. I mean, there's Wrath, there's Phyrexian Rebirth, which are not 1-for-1 removal at all, and it just feels like if the opponent gets on board fast or is able to recover from one of the sweepers, there's not really enough going on here to do that. Like, on the other hand, Dark Ritual and Hypnotic Spectre is a remarkable thing that's been great since 1993 and will continue to be great pretty much forever. But it just feels like there's something amiss with this deck. Like, it's another deck like the one we talked about earlier, where it feels like it's straddling being a board control deck and being a tempo-y sort of deck, and there's punishment for that. Also, they should be punished because they hid one of the best altars in the cube, the Terror, behind 2 foils. So there's that. But it's a fun deck, and it has Dust Bowl and Strip Mine, so could definitely muff up some people's mana bases. But it just feels like it's leaning really hard on slowing down the game, hoping to slow down the game with things like mobilization, and then landing something like one of the sweepers, and then being able to follow up with a Sengir or a Massacre Girl, and then try to deal out deal out the damage that way. And that's good. It's just obviously not good enough. I didn't talk to the person who drafted this deck. Couldn't pick him out of a lineup, to be perfectly honest. I'm not sure who it was, but I like it. It's just something feels at odds in the way that it is constructed, if I had to say something about that. So that was the top 8 decks. Okay, and here we have the winning deck from the, the first draft that took place on the weekend. A Phyrexian Processor that the one time I saw it in play was on 7, so it's a good amount to be processed. We have another control deck. This is a very bog standard blue-white control deck. I don't know if it says much that both of the winning decks from the two drafts were control decks, but they were different control decks, and blue cards are powerful. So there's that. This deck, you may be able to tell in the file name, went 2-0-1. They did have a forced draw in the second round, I think. It wasn't even in the final. I think it was in the second round, which led to some weird matchup nonsense. I have 7 of the decks from this draft. I think I'm missing one of the 2-in-1s, but I'm not even sure because of the wonky records. So this deck notable for not featuring an entire ton of cards printed in the modern era. In fact, the Signets, Preordain, Mystic Confluence, and Muldrifter are the standouts in that regard, and everything else is, I guess, Hallowed Fountain as well. Everything else is classic and of the era, and it's still held its own because control is very good and will continue to be. So we'll see what that means. All right, here we have another 2-1 deck. This deck is great. I love it. I really like blue-red-green decks a ton, and I like blue-red, I like blue-green, I like red-green. Like, those are 3 different color combinations that I really like, and I kind of love this, opposition hermit-based deck. It's a very classic style of archetype, and getting to plow under your opponent, creeping mold, temporal spring, really just do miserable things, waterfront bouncer, and then just kill your opponent with, legions of squirrels from the hermits after you opposition them down. It's not quite squirrel opposition, in the sense that there's no squirrel nest, but Deep Forest and Deranged Hermit both do a yeoman's effort in looking like the same style of squirrel deck that we're used to with seeing with opposition. Yeah, we have another 2-in-1. This one is, I'm not sure why there's an upheaval in this deck. I mean, I guess there's 2 mana rocks, or 2, big mana positive rocks and 2 signets, so there's enough positivity, but this to me feels like a Grixis control tempo deck that just has upheaval because upheaval is good, and I'm kind of fine with that. It went 2-1, so I can't complain too terribly much about it, right? Because they did the thing, and that is what matters. Once again, we have another deck here where a majority of the cards in the deck and sort of the business end of the deck are things that have existed forever, and they're just helped along by more modern spells. Like, the Signets are pretty good with an upheaval, but Thran Dynamo and Grim Monolith are better. And Baral, also good with upheaval, right? Upheaval for 5 is still better than upheaval for 6, but again, not absolutely back-breaking. And Baral's triggered ability only gets triggered off of Counterspell, Remand, and Izzet Charm, and the rest of, the non-creature spells don't trigger it. So, and then a Morphling and a Silent Spectre just doing their job and getting stuff together, right? Like, Morphling, always good. Spectre's always good, right? Pardon me. Shit your opponent's hand apart. Shred your opponent's hand apart is what I meant to say there. Shred your opponent's hand apart, and then, you got to do it to them sometimes. We have another 2-1. This one kind of blurry, so a little bit harder to see. I wanted to zoom in a little bit. This is a Jund Fires deck, and boy is it. Like, the Phyrexian Colossus without a reliable way to untap it is a little weird to me, but everything else is just great. Making Goblin tokens, making Sap Rolling tokens, Spiritmonger will forever be Spiritmonger. I don't often get to see Agonizing Demise in, positive record lists, so that was nice to see. I did not get to talk to the person who piloted this deck about the Agonizing Demise, but I tell you, it's a cool card, and kicking it is powerful later in the game. So, got some direct damage in the, the Volcanic Hammer, and that's, all well and fine, but throwing things with Siege Gang Commander is also fantastic. I mean, the Mog War Marshal and Crank Ghost Command making additional Goblin tokens to go along with Siege Gang Commander is kind of exactly the kind of thing we're looking for, and it's Fires, right? Fires was, and always will be one of my favorite archetypes. So we're here, we're seeing it. Got the Treetop Village in there for village things, and just a fun looking deck. I hope that they got to Berserk, a big Spirit Monger, or maybe a Phyrexian Colossus or something. I think that would be make for a really cool story. I didn't, like I said, I didn't get a chance to talk to them, so I don't know if they did, but kind of hope they did because that'd be rad. And then now we have, I'm going to go to the 1/1/1, and then we'll go to the 1/2s. The 1/1/1, the deck with the forced draw, is a black-white deck, like the O3, a lot like the O3 that we saw in the top 8, except this one has the Dauthi Voidwalker, which has been a card of contention in this cube since it came out. I've had a lot of people tell me that in a vacuum, Dauthi Voidwalker is too powerful, and I've had a lot of people tell me after playing it that Dauthi Voidwalker is very powerful, but it is not completely, game warping or game breaking. And my personal relationship with Dauthi Voidwalker, the one time I've drafted it, I think I played it in 4 of my games and did not get to untap with it a single time. It was removed every single time. What else we got here? I guess we're really not black-white. We are black Karmic Guide, which is also fine. I mean, we've got several ways to loop things. We have the Victimize, we have Persist, we have ways to get stuff into the graveyard relatively easily with the Pack Rat. The Fledgling Djinn and Skulking Ghost don't really belong here, in my opinion, but I guess, they're small enough that you can get them going with Tortured Existence to loop, because they're low mana requirement. Looping Gray Merchant seems pretty cool in this deck, because you can stick down, God forbid you have a Scion of Darkness, but like Grinning Demon, a Ghost or a Djinn, maybe even a Dauthi Voidwalker, and land a Gray Merchant for a big drain, and then, loop it through any number of the different ways that this deck can loop things is really cool. Precursor Golem, same thing. Sundering Titan, same thing. Anything where you can loop loop things is pretty cool. Like victimizing a Precursor Golem back. I mean, just getting a Precursor Golem or a Sundering Titan back is pretty cool, especially in a deck like this. The Sundering Titan, I think, would be really good because it just kills lands, and you're a predominantly black deck, right? Like, there's 4, I think, planes there. I can't tell if those 2 cards between the Visible Plains and the Visible Swamp are planes, but it wouldn't surprise me if maybe only one of them is. Like, we're on the 4 to 6 planes and an Orzhov Signet, because all we need to do is cast a Karmic Guide. And yeah, Sundering Titan all day, especially against like the 3-color deck that we saw, does numbers, does what Sundering Titan does for those of us who've been playing since Sundering Titan's been a thing. Here we have a 1/2 blue-black tempo deck. This is not really a control deck per se. This is definitely a lot more of a tempo deck. It's got control elements, right? There's removal, there's counter spells, but you have a lot of card draw and a lot of, tempo stuff that just goes really hard in that regard. The card whose art is completely washed out is Psychotog, and then beneath that is Manowar. So Psychotog and Manowar, both pretty good tempo, tempo hits. Obviously, I mean, Psychotog, it's Psychotog, right? If we're doing pinpoint removal, if we're doing counter spells, that's going to put a lot of cards into our graveyard that we can eat with the Psychotog, and late game that usually looks pretty good. Turok, from what I saw, did well, at least in one game I saw them cast it. It's Turok, right? You get a 2/1 and a him and a 4/3 if you get it right. So if you get the him, 4/3 with protection from white for 1 black, it's pretty good. I happen to be quite fond of it, and it feels thematically appropriate because it's Turok. It is him of the him. So it's a 1/2. It's a 1/2 that I'm missing. Okay. And here we have a Survival of the Fittest deck that went 0-3, and I think it's just a little unfocused. It has Coffin Queen and Necromancy, but it also has things like Hunting Moa and Nantuko Shade, which don't really go necessarily all that well along with that. Like looping things with Eternal Witness and um, necromancy and getting things back and killing things with Necrotol or Reclamation Sage or um, the Centaur Chieftain. If you have Threshold, get the Centaur Chieftain value. Thran Golem is not getting enchanted here except by Rancor, and the Spirit and the Laquatus' champion are only getting returned. I mean, they have the Reanimate and the Necromancy. I feel like this deck and the black white deck were really fighting over it, and then a couple of black pieces being stolen by this 1/2 deck didn't help either. So this also explains why, because we have 1, 2, 3, 4 of the 7 deck lists that we have had swamps. And I know that the one piece of constructive feedback that I got from players in this draft during the draft was that the land box had run down to 1 swamp, which, considering that there are 40 lands in the land box, is kind of surprising and something I did not ever expect to have to deal with. It's never happened before in the 18 previous drafts to this. So definitely a piece to keep in mind and see if that's going to be a repeating pattern or if that was just a one-off. Great deal in the deck picture here of them showing off the signatures. We get the 3 Pete Mentors and the Ken Meyer Jr. Feels pretty good there. I always like it when people show off the nice things. But then they buried the Coffin Queen behind the Eternal Witness, so swings and roundabouts from an aesthetic standpoint, and kind of swings and roundabouts from their record as well. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to leave up the deck that I liked best from this draft. This beautiful Rug Tempo Opposition Hermit pile, while I talk about some closing thoughts. What have I learned from the first 2 drafts ever of this cube that did not feature me in them, and the first time that it has been drafted with, I hesitate to say a competitive mindset because the people there weren't necessarily terribly competitive, but there was a prize on the line, right? There was a trophy, there was a first place playmat, and there was store credit on the line. So at least the top 8 draft was, there were stakes, there were important things to be gleaned, and even this draft was important because it was one of only 3 ranked drafts that led into the top 8. So, everything kind of mattered at least a little bit if you were angling for top 8. I know myself and several of the others weren't really angling for top 8, though I did manage to 3L a Pauper Cube draft, and I'll be doing a write-up on my Substack, Primitive Etchings, about the 4 drafts that I did over the weekend. Spoilers, did not do very well. Went 6-6 over 4 drafts, but hey, you win some, you lose some, and my cube got some cool stuff done with it. Other takeaways, obviously, control is still powerful. Control is always powerful. Control is going to be powerful because the blue cards, the black cards have just been good, and I'm trying to balance that out, right? Like, I want sort of in any given draft there to be a good control deck, a good, couple of control decks, a good couple of tempo decks, a good couple of aggro decks, and maybe even a combo deck. And with that being the angle, the fact that there weren't really too many traditional aggro decks, at least that I didn't get pictures of, right? There's 3 decks that I didn't get pictures from that are out there in the aether somewhere. Players of those decks, if you happened to take a picture of it and just didn't submit it through Hedron Network, if you see this video, reach out to me, or if you know one of those players whose deck you don't see featured here, reach out to me. I'd love to see it, and maybe I'll do an addendum to the video if I get it at a later date. Also, some changes have already been made to the cube. I'm not going to go too terribly in depth on them because I kind of want to drop them as a bit of a surprise on my local playgroup. But also, if you've seen the Cube Cobra page for the cube, you can see all of that. That's already been done. I did that in the wake of this, but it's both an expansion and a bit of a powering up. Because I've been at a medium power level for a very long time, and I'm not going full, gloves off, foot on the gas, powered, but I have added more powerful cards now, and want to see what that's like. And maybe we'll continue doing that. Maybe I won't. I don't know. We'll have to see how it comes. But if you find yourself in the Philadelphia or South Jersey area and you looked at these deck picks and went, God damn it, that cube is pretty, or God damn it, that cube looks like fun, or man, this guy rambled for almost 40 minutes about how pretty and fun his cube is, I would like to play that. Hit me up. You can either hit me up at any of the socials that are down below here. You can hit me in the comments on this video. You can find me anywhere, me personally, anywhere the words Champ Blankman are found next to one another on the internet. I'm on Discord, Reddit, YouTube, obviously, Blue Sky, Threads, unfortunately, Instagram, similarly, unfortunately, Facebook, if you're old, similarly, unfortunately. And expect probably some more retro old frame cube content coming from me on this channel, because I've been in a 4-year love affair with this cube and this environment and drafting with retro frame cards, and that's not going anywhere. And there's not enough old school cube, not old school is bad, old school is its own thing that I also do. Old style retro frame, old original card frame environments out there being drafted, so I will try to make some more content with that. Until the next time I see you, remember, social engagement, comments, also Free Palestine, fuck ICE, and death to fascists. Bye, everybody.